Hey friends, Adam from Bantha Overland. I know the Christmas lights are still up, but it's the time of the year in the winter when I like to start dreaming and planning trips for the next year. And so I'm excited to find some new routes and awesome dispersed camping. And today I want to tell you about one of the tools I've been using for the last year or two to help me plan and discover cool places at home, and then navigate and discover things along the way, know where I am, and make changes based on conditions and obstacles out there in the field. So today we're going to talk about onX Offroad, and I have it here on my phone, which is where I normally use it when I'm traveling. And then I also have it here on my laptop, which is where I use it at home when I'm planning and getting ideas. So today we're going to take a deep dive. We're going to go through every feature in onX. We're going to go through web. We're going to go through mobile. We're even going to look at CarPlay out in the truck. And so I'm going to go through every feature that I've learned in the past 2 years, tell you what I love the most, and hopefully this is sort of a review and a deep dive of all those features to help you decide if onX Offroad is right for you. And I encourage you to download a trial and follow along if you want, so you can check out some of these things for yourself as you're following along on the video. And I hope it helps you get out there on a cool adventure this year in 2025. So if that sounds interesting to you, let's get to it. At Bantha Overland, we're on a mission to inspire and enable more people to get outside and experience the fulfillment of overland-based travel. Join us as we share our adventures and tips for finding awesome routes and dispersed camping, make our own DIY overland gear, and find our balance of mixing work and play as we try to spend more of our time traveling, exploring, and connecting. All right, so if you haven't heard of onX, you can head over to onxmaps.com and check out their website. onX makes a few different apps. You might hear of them or have heard of them because you're a hunter, and so they originally started onX Hunt, and they've expanded into onX Offroad and onX Backcountry. So sort of apps that are tailored towards very specific experiences, which I think is pretty cool. And actually one of the things I found about onX Offroad is I've probably gone from using 12 different apps and websites to plan and go on my overland adventures, and I mainly just use onX with a few other apps and websites from time to time for specific things. So hopefully you'll see that as we get into the feature deep dive today. One of the things I also think is super cool about onX is that they're very committed to public land access. And so you can go on their website and read about this a little bit more, but we all need public land to do the kind of recreation we love, off-roading and overlanding. And so it's really cool to see a company whose mission is definitely aligned with something I want to be doing. Okay, so from here, I'm going to go to Open Map, and I'm going to select Off-Road Map. Now, I'm already logged in. If you weren't, you would need to sign up for a trial or log in first, but this is an easy way to get back to the map. You can go to onxmaps.com, click Open Map, and then click on Off-Road Map, or you can bookmark it. All right, so you can see I'm logged in here in onX Offroad, and this is the web version. There's also iOS app, iPad app, Android apps, CarPlay apps, Android Auto apps, and we'll look at some of those other iOS apps later because that's what I use. But it's a very consistent experience across those different apps, so I'm mainly going to show you on web, and web is normally where I explore different places I might want to visit. I pick an area, I plan an off-road adventure, maybe with some camping or hiking, and so I really want to show you bits of my workflow. This won't be the whole thing. I'm going to be doing a bunch more videos that are really focused on my workflow and some of the other tools and resources I use. But today I really want to show you the features of onX Offroad. So we're going to get into it here. So this is the topo map that is currently selected, and you can see it's sort of centered on the Denver area. This is where my home is. I'm just north of Denver in Colorado. And so this is the map view I get when I log in. You can always come down here and click my location, and it'll recenter the map on where you're located. And then you can also use plus to zoom in or minus to zoom out. And then I have a trackpad right now, so I can sort of pinch and zoom on that trackpad. Or, if you have a mouse, you can use a mouse or whatever. So very familiar, I think, as to the way maps work. And one of the things you start to see on here is, of course, you see the highways and the cities and all that kind of stuff, but we're really here for off-roading, right? We're really here for overlanding. And so as I zoom in, one of the things you start to see is different types of public land and different people that own them. Now, I'll get into the map key here in a little bit so we can figure out exactly what all this means, but I'm sure you can start to guess if you've ever been in this area. This green, these are national forests, U.S. national forests, and this sort of yellow color, this is BLM. Now, if we come up north a little bit, you'll see Rocky Mountain National Park, which is a little bit of a lighter green, and even things like state land. So you can see here Golden Gate Canyon State Park, just west of Golden. And as I zoom in, you'll see the progressive map layers kind of come in. So you can see all sorts of streets here and stuff like this. And then one of the things you'll start to see is that there's also these differently colored roads, or I'll call these off-road trails. And so these are the places that you can drive off-road. And so this is really one of the big things onX Off-Road is all about, right? Like, we want to go on cool dirt trails. We want to go in cool places and play. And so we'll get into this in more detail in a little bit, but each of these roads is potentially a trail that you might want to explore, and they have more information for you to get. And some of these trails even have a ton of information with difficulty ratings and suggested times of years to go and descriptions and photos and things like that. And so as we dive into the features, we'll go through all that and how that works. Also, some basic map features. You can see there's a compass here and I'm facing north. So if I was to hold down control, you can see I can sort of rotate that map around and I can make north point down. And so I can also tilt the map if I wanted to get more of a 3D view. And so you can use the compass to figure out which way you're pointing, or you can click it and it'll reorient itself north if you're not facing north. So let's say north is that way. If I click it once, the map goes back up with north pointing up. And so already at a glance, we can see that we can tell two things which are really important to finding cool off-road adventures. We can see where public land is, and then we can also see off-road trails that are identified on these public lands. And so the trails are really like a ski map if you've ever seen one of those. Green is an easier trail, blue is an intermediate trail, black is a harder trail, and there are even a couple red trails on here which are really extreme, and we'll get into the difficulty and everything like that. You can also see things like this is wilderness, no motorized use, so wilderness areas have their own regulations and you're generally not going to find roads in them. And then you can also see recreation sites, like there's some campgrounds on here, there's some trailheads, and so there's just a ton of information for really finding where you might want to go play and adventure. Now, if you're trying to learn more about what all these different things mean on the map and sort of find the map key, you can come up here to activity, and we'll go through some of these other options later, but all the way at the bottom, there's a map legend. And if you click this, you'll get the legend for what's on the map right now. And so you can see for motorized trails, there's this easy, moderate, difficult, and extreme that I talked about. And you can sort of see there's the beige color, which it's unknown. And we'll talk about why that is in a little bit. And then you can tell the road types, so full width, high clearance, different widths, seasonal closure, who owns the land, some of the different point of interest icons that are used on the map. And so that really helps you to read the map, but I'm guessing you can probably guess what a lot of those mean pretty well. So I'm now going to go to an area that I like to explore and talk a little bit more how I might plan an adventure in the real world. So I'm going to search for Laramie in Wyoming. This is about 2.5 hours north of me in Denver. And there's an area that I really like in Laramie called Pole Mountain. It's to the east of it right here. It's part of Medicine Bow Route National Forest. And it used to be an old artillery range, but now it's a great place for just playing outside, biking, hiking, camping, and there's a lot of forest roads that you're allowed to drive off-road on. And so I'm going to go ahead and come here to Pole Mountain. And so you can already start to see some things by looking at this map. You can see where the public land is. In fact, if you want to click on it, you can actually click and see who owns the land. So you can see Medicine Bow National Forest owns it. You can get coordinates, you can get the ranger district name, you can get the forest website. So this can be really useful because if you want to call the ranger, you need to know which ranger district it is. So this is Laramie, and then you can click on the website and it'll take you out to the Forest Service website. And so very, very useful to be able to find this. I've spent like 10 or 20 minutes trying to find the ranger district before to look up more information. And you can see I use search to find that. So, if there was a particular thing you're looking for, like let's say you were looking for Eagle Rock here, which looks like it's a trail. If I search here, it's going to do search results based on what's closer to me or further away. So you can see results in Wyoming and then all the way over into Colorado, etc. So if we wanted to go on the White Rim Road or something like that out in Utah, right, we could easily search and find it, and then there's the trail. So one cool way to check out the trails in an area is to use Discover, and Discover will basically show you trails nearby the map area you're looking at. So as you move around the map, you might see search this area, and you can click it to update the results. And then when you hover over these, you sort of see them highlighted on the map. So this is Headquarters Road, and then a little bit above it is Caretakers, and then Crow Spring. And you can see some photos, and you can see how difficult they are and how long they are. Now, if we click on one of these roads, you'll see a bunch more information. You'll see how long that road is, what its distance is, what its highest elevation and lowest elevation are, how difficult it is, and what its rating is. And we'll talk about what 3 out of 10 means in a minute. For now, you can assume it's a little bit easier than a 10. This took an hour for somebody that wrote it, and someone suggested that summer and fall would be a good time for this trail. And it was submitted by an onX trail guide. So onX trail guides are real people that go out and they run trails and they add all this information so that you can look at it to help plan your trip and decide if that's an adventure that's too easy for you or too hard for you or just right for you. And so some of that information that the trail guide comes up with is what it's accessible by. So in this case, you can see everything from a full-size truck down to a motorcycle. There's a description. So the trail guide wrote this, and you could go through it and just, there's maybe a little bit of off camber, right? It's a little eroded, could be a little rocky. So again, it can help you decide if it's for you. And then the really cool part are photos, right? So I'm a very visual person. You can come in here and you can see, what did that road look like? It looks like there's a little dip, there's a little rock, right? It looks like somebody could pass that Jeep right now. I can see it looks like it's a pine area with some rocks on the side. Okay, I can see there's a few rocks, a little rutted, could be a puddle, right? A little narrow there. Right? So it just really gives you a sense, I think, of what that place is like and if it's for you without giving it away, right? Like 6 or 7 photos is not going to ruin the surprise of what's on a 6 or 7 mile off-road trail. And then we get to this difficulty rating. So one of the things I really like about onX is that they have predefined definitions for what these levels are. And so as these trail guides go out, they measure and they compare to these notes in here to make sure they're rating it appropriately. And so for this particular trail, it's a 3, and you can see it might be uneven, rutted, right? There might be some loose rocks, sandy washes. There might be that puddle. It could be a foot deep. There could be a mud hole. There could be an obstacle up to 12 inches. And so you can sort of use this plus the description plus the photo to really see what might be going on. Now for me, I have a F350 truck with a pop-up truck camper in the back of it. And most of the trails I enjoy in onX are between 1 and 4. And so everybody's type of adventure is different. You may be a 1 and a 2 person. You may be a 5 person. You may be a 10 person, where if you read this, you're probably winching your Jeep vertically up a rock face. And so you can really use these difficulty ratings to not only figure out what you do want to do, but also what you don't want to do. And I love that onX has this very wide scale that's not just for people in SUVs or not just for people in Jeeps, but for everybody to find their own adventure. Okay, I know this is a lot, and I think it can be really helpful to play with it for yourself. So if you don't already have an onX account, there's a link below you can use to get started. You can get a trial, you can play around with it, you can see if it's for you. And if you do decide that you want to try it for your next adventure, you'll get 20% off. So I'd really appreciate it if you use that link. It helps to support the channel. And let's get back to the features. All right, so if we go back here, you'll also see that the surface type of this trail is mostly dirt, and the photos, I would say, confirm that. And then you can look at the elevation too, and as you follow along this elevation chart on the map, you'll see this little circle follow me. And so, if there's like a mountain peak or something or a high point and you wanted to know where that was, this is useful as well. And then you can find some nearby trails as well. So lots of information. if you zoom in here a little bit, like let's look at some of these other trails. You'll notice that some of these trails are just sort of beige, right? They don't have a green or a blue or a black. And so if we click on those, we do get some information. Like this is Bisbee Hill Road. It has a trail ID, which looks very much like a Forest Service road designation. It says what it's accessible by. It doesn't have any open or closed dates. This is January, through December, so the whole year. But I think one of the interesting things about it is, there's a lot less information than the Green Trail, and this is because a trail guide hasn't run it. And so this is a trail you could go explore, but there's just not the photos and the description and everything like that. So if you're looking for a little bit more adventure, and you don't want to necessarily know what it's going to be, or you want to try a new trail, you could come over here and try this trail, which is unguided. And if you want it, you could also become an onX trail guide. So you can search for more information on that on the interwebs. But basically, trail guides go out, run those trails, provide that information, and help folks like you find a trail that's good for them. So a couple other interesting pieces of trail information you can use to figure out if it's the right trail for you. This trail, for example, Middle Fork Access, has an open date of May through January, and so it looks like for a little bit part of the year it is closed to access. And so I really appreciate that onX has this information, and the map will actually update as well when it's closed, so you can sort of see that open closed information. Another piece of information that can be useful are trail reports. So all onX users can add trail reports, and it's just a way of saying, hey, I ran this trail, here's what conditions were like, here's some information you might need to know. And so you can see Mike here ran this trail last in November. It was open, there were some snowdrifts on the road, but still passable. And so we can imagine it might be a little bit snowier now that it's January when I'm recording this. And so it's a great way to get more information from users. You can see here they were reporting this trail was closed in early May. And it's a great way to also contribute to the community. All right, so based on looking at the map and looking at the public land and looking at the off-road opportunities, and even coming in here and maybe looking around and saying, there's some cool campgrounds. Looks like there's some hiking trails. Right, there's some facilities, there's a picnic area. Maybe this is somewhere that we're interested in, right? So we found an area and we feel like we want to explore it. So now I would normally transition a little bit more into planning mode. Like, okay, I want to go to this area, but like, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? What do I want to remember when I'm there in a couple weeks or a couple months, or depending on how far in advance I'm planning. And so one of the things I want to show you is switching the base map from topo, which we've been on, to satellite. And so I think this really starts to give you a sense of what the area is like. So here we see these really cool rocks, Turtle Rock here. And if you come down here and you switch the base map into 3D, you'll get this super cool 3D view. And if you hold down Control, you can sort of tilt and pan around with your mouse or your trackpad. And so, I like hiking, I like rocks, I like sort of cool views. And so it's really helpful for me to come in here and see, hey, these rocks look awesome. Now, if I'm a campground camper, right, I could come in here and take a peek at the campground and say, how close are these sites? Are there some trees? Is there some privacy, right? Or if I was a dispersed camper and I wanted to find some camping along some of those trails, right, I might come in here and I might start looking along the road, see if it looks like there's any dispersed camping opportunities. And of course, you got to check local regulations, check, motor vehicle use maps for the U.S. Forest Service, or check BLM for that area, or call a ranger. You can see someone is camped here. And so it's a pretty good indication that if we can do some research and confirm you're allowed to disperse camp here, it's a allowed dispersed camping area, right? And so we're starting to see what activities are available here. So I got the hiking, I got the off-roading, I got the camping, and I'm getting pretty excited about this area. And I just love this 3D view. I think it's such a cool way to see what's available. Now, if you want to come into the base map and switch to hybrid, what you'll see here is that it adds the topo lines too. So if you're trying to figure out, a little bit more specifically how much elevation change is there, how quickly does that elevation change happen, you can add those topo lines to the satellite imagery. Now, I also want to switch back to topo real quick and show you this new HD topo. So Before, this is sort of what topo looked like, and you can see the lines, you can see some of the elevation shifts, but this new HD topo is awesome. If you look at this, I believe it's using some LiDAR data, and so you can really start to get a sense for some of that detail here in the rock and the area and what that's going to look like as well. So that's another great feature to check out if you're trying to find elevation or cool views or things like that. I know it's a lot of information. It's a lot of tools to try. Really cool stuff. You're probably excited by it, but you probably have some questions too, and that's okay. So go down in the comments below and ask a question. I'm sure there's something that wasn't entirely clear the way I explained it, or something that I didn't hit. Or if you're an existing onX off-road user, I'd love it if you share some of your tips that you find helpful for using the app. You can also check out our website at banthaaoverland.com, where we have blog posts and links to our YouTube channel, where we have lots of videos about finding cool routes and dispersed camps, about Starlink and working remotely, and how we sort of balance work and play. And you might have also seen my 3D printer over in the corner. I love making my own Overland gear, and so there's more information about that on the website as well. All right, back to it. All right, now another useful feature in onX Off-Road is the recent imagery. And so if we turn this on, you'll see it gets a little fuzzy because it's using lower resolution satellite imagery, because this is getting imaged a lot more frequently. But what we can see is just a few weeks ago, since I'm recording this, there's snow on the ground, right? And so we can start to get a sense of what is that area like at this time of year? Or let's say we were thinking of planning a trip in April. We could go back to April of last year, and we could see what the conditions look like at that time. So it looks like in early April, there's a bit of snow. And as we get into later April and early May, looks like it comes back a little bit. And then mid-May, I don't really see any snow. And so it's going to change every year, but recent imagery is a really cool way to figure out if an area is going to be snowy when you don't want it to be, or be snowy when you do want it to be. And so I use that a lot, especially when I'm planning trips well into the future. So those are the basic map controls and base layers of onX Off-Road. Now there's also some additional layers and filters that really let you customize the map to focus on what you care about most, and we're going to get into some of those now. So if you come up here to Activity and click this, you're going to come into some filters and some map layers. Now there's a dirt mode and a snowmobile mode. I'm not a snowmobiler, so I'm going to skip snow, but we're going to look at dirt. And so there's a couple things you can do here. One is you can filter the trails on the map by vehicle width. So for example, I have a truck that's full width and high clearance. And so as you see, as I click these and unclick these, you're going to have the map get filtered. So if I take high clearance off, there's some off-road trails that it's not going to recommend to me. And then difficulty level, as I said before, I'm sort of a 1 to 4, 1 to 5 person, so that's easy to moderate, green and blue. And so as I click those on or off, it's also going to filter the map. So it's just a way to focus a little bit. And then if you were going for a particular trip length, you could filter the trail length here. So you could say, hey, I only want super long trails, right? Or I only want super short trails. I often will combine a bunch of trails, but this can be useful if you're looking for a multi-day adventure and you don't want to think about it too much. One good hack is My Garage. So if you come in here, you can set up the different vehicles you own. And when you turn on this key icon, you'll basically filter the map with predefined filters for that vehicle. So if I come back to My Garage and I edit this, you'll see this is my rig, Bantha 1, the truck with the truck camper. And I've selected I want to focus on full width roads, high clearance roads, and then these different surface types. And it'll just remember that and filter the map for me. So pretty handy if you don't want to come in and do the filters every time. And then let's get into some of the map layers. So one of the most valuable map layers, in my opinion, is private land. So if you come in here, you'll see these red lines came in, and you also see some names. And so what this is showing you is where private land is and who owns it. And so, for example, if you thought, you were just going to come over here and keep off-roading down this trail, you're going to cross from Medicine Bow National Forests to BLM to somebody's ranch, and you're probably not allowed to be on that person's ranch. And so, to recreate responsibly and to know where you are and know you're allowed to be there, this public land layer is awesome. And I turn it on and leave it on wherever I am, it's just always a great resource, especially because sometimes you're going to have in-holdings, you're going to have private land within public land. And so it's really, really helpful to know if you're allowed to be there or not. Another useful feature is the precipitation layer. And so if you zoom out here, we'll see real-time precipitation. It looks like there's a bit of a storm here near Pole Mountain and Cheyenne. And so this can be super helpful if you're driving. Now, that does require a cellular connection, a data connection, because it's real-time data. But if that's available, it'll show up here. You can also do temperature. And so it is cold right now in Wyoming, unsurprisingly. But if we zoom out a little bit and maybe go down to New Mexico, we'll see it's a little bit warmer. It's starting to get yellow. And if we want the key for that feature, you can hit layer details, and you can see it looks like it's probably, maybe in the 60s and 70s down here in Southern California and Baja and Southern Arizona and things like that. So the layers can be a super useful way to get a little bit more information, either for real time as you're out there or as you're planning. Something else I'll often turn on are these air quality and active wildfire layers. And so as you turn these on, you'll see smoke and you'll see active fires. And so fortunately, there aren't really any active fires in Colorado. I think there's a prescribed burn where they're clearing out some timber, but right now near LA. So you can see the air quality. We'll focus on that, and you can see the key here. So very, very hazardous in the Pasadena area right now. And then if we were to come down here and turn on active wildfires, we'd see where those fires are. And so you can see a couple things. You can see the name of the fire. So this is the Palisades fire. And then you can also actually see these sort of blurry flames, and these are satellite detected hotspots. So a fire might have a boundary outline that humans drew, but this satellite detect feature is meant to also supplement that with actual detected hotspots. And so, this might be helpful if you were planning a trip, and you're like, hey, there's a fire there, we probably need to replan. Or if you're out there in the field and you have cellular data, or maybe you carry a Starlink like I like to do, you can get some of that data, you can figure out what's going on, and you can make decisions in real time to stay safe and stay out of that area so that first responders can deal with what they need to deal with. Now, of course, it's not always just being in the fire, right? Sometimes smoke travels a very far distance. And so here's an example of where the smoke is going from some of those fires. And so that can also be very helpful, because even if you're not in the fire, maybe you don't want to be sitting in heavy smoke. And then lastly, historic wildfires can be very useful. So wow, look at all these guided trails. Look at this. It's crazy. There's tens of thousands of guided trails. I think that's like one of the things that a lot of people don't know about onX. Like, I would use it just for these guided trails. Like, it would take me more than a lifetime to ever use all of these trails, right? So it's super cool that there's so many options. But if we come back here to Colorado, you can see here that as we turn on the historical wildfire map, we indeed have had some historical wildfires near Denver. And you can see that things that are yellow are a little bit older. Things that are red are a little bit more recent. So, you might look at this plus satellite imagery and say, do I want to be in a very recent burn area versus maybe an older burn area has recovered a little bit, although they can certainly take a lot of time. And so, again, another thing to just help you make decisions about planning your trip. And then cell coverage maps. So I have Verizon right now, so I'll turn that on. And if we go back to that Pole Mountain area we were looking at, you can sort of see there's a little bit of coverage, but it's light pink and it's a little spotty. And so this might not be guaranteed coverage. So my Starlink is probably going to do okay there. I saw some of those photos, and it looks like there's some wide open spaces where you can set up a Starlink and it can get a good view of the sky. But really, right, there's much better cell coverage near Laramie or Cheyenne. Now, maybe if you're AT&T, coverage might be a little bit better. T-Mobile looks very much like Verizon. So not a guarantee, right? Obstacles, mountains, things like that might block a cell phone signal, but this can be some good information to know if you're going to the Laramie Mountains, you're probably not going to get cell phone coverage. Now, I know I'm going through a lot of features and just sort of showing you this tool and that tool, and you might be wondering, well, how the heck do you use this to plan a trip? What's your process? What's your workflow? What do you do first, second, third? What do you do at home? What do you do when you're out there driving down the trail? And so I'm going to be doing a series about how I plan go on and come home from trips using onX and some other tools and resources. And so if you're interested in that, hit the subscribe button and I'll get into all of the little details and tricks that I use in my own workflow. Today, I sort of just wanted to let you know about all the different features and tools available in onX Offroad. A couple other tools that are handy here. There's also weather. So if you come down to the lower right and click weather, you can see weather for the location that's centered in your map. And so you can see currently it feels like 11 degrees here. It's pretty chilly. You can see the sunrise, the sunset, the weather forecast. You can see the moon phases. And so depending on the kind of activities you're going to be doing, this might be helpful to help you plan. I often will check this a week or a few days before going out on the trip. And, if it were just going to snow and be -10 for the whole week, I might replan my trip to somewhere else. Because as fun as it is to make plans and want to go somewhere, the weather is the weather. And so we need to be able to respond to it. All right, so let's say we're going to Pole Mountain and we've looked at some of these off-road trails and they look pretty cool and we found some potential camping spots. And so let's say we looked at Tame Cat Road here. We thought, hey, I'm a tame cat. I looked at these photos, looks pretty. There's some aspens. I want to go in the spring. There's some rocks I can check out. And so if I wanted to run this trail, one of the things I might do is use one of these map tools to sort of save it to my map so I can remember it. Now I could just, I could share this with a friend if I just wanted to say, hey, you want to check this out? Here's a link, right? And my friend could sign up if he's not already an onX member and check it out. But let's say I want to start to sort of plan and organize this trip. So I added a point of interest over here in the map tools. I click that and I get this little point of interest icon, and I'm going to drag it here to the start of the trail. Now I have a whole color scheme and icon scheme and map key that I use for onX. I'm not going to go through that today. If you're interested, hit subscribe and I'll do a video on it in the future. And if you have any questions during this video, please put them below. If you have any tips I'm not sharing, put them below. I'd love to help, and I can do some follow-up videos or respond to your questions to help you get the most out of onX. But I'm going to basically say that I'm going to name this Tame Cat 4x4 Trailhead. I am going to change this to the 4x4 icon, and I use purple for things like this, and then I'm going to save it. And so now on the map I have this point of interest, and if I zoom in, I zoom out, I pan, that'll always be there so I can quickly sort of see where that trailhead is. And again, if I wanted to share this with a friend, I could go ahead and get a sharing link. But what I really like to do is I like to use folders. And so over here, you'll see I previously created a folder called Pole Mountain Trip. Let me actually delete that and we can make it together. So I'll say Pole Mountain Trip. I'll make a new folder. And then when I have that point of interest, I can go ahead and add it to that folder. And one of the really nice things about folders is you can sort of do group actions. You can see all your waypoints and your tracks, and your areas and things like that right here. You could also share the whole folder. So I really like this. If I'm going on a trip with some friends, I will share the whole folder. And one of the cool new beta features that onX has turned on for some users is contribute. So you could make a view only folder, which is I'm the person that can make changes to it. No one else can. Or you can make a contribute folder, which means that my friends can also add points of interest and routes and things like that. And so it makes it more collaborative. So I would do that. I'd get the link, and then I normally just text my friends. So I'd probably just text them. So, another thing I'll often do on here, we saw some dispersed camping opportunities before perhaps. And so, if I were on this map and I saw some of those areas that look like potential dispersed camping locations, I might come in here and I might add a point of interest and say, dispersed site, and then maybe get a camping icon here, right? And then I can add that to my folder. All right, so you can tell I'm getting, sort of organized here. I'm getting some options together. I might also, looks like another dispersed camping site, so I might add one more right here. And I can also just add it to the folder when I'm making it. You don't necessarily have to add it later, right? So now I'm very organized. starting to see, everything in the Pole Mountain area. And then there's some other map tools I might use. So I've been here before, and I like to sort of come a certain way in. It's just a cool drive, especially if I have a friend with me that hasn't been there. And so I'm going to make a route. So I click the route tool up here in the upper right in the map tools, and I'm going to choose pink, and I'm going to start making a route. So I'm going to come off I-80. I'm going to come down here, and you can see, it's sort of snapping to the road depending on what I hover over, and you can click and add a point, right? And you can undo that point. You can turn off snap to. There's lots of things you can do, but for purposes of today, I'm just going to show you. Let's say I wanted to sort of take the back way in. So I'm coming across these green roads, and I'm going to come up to Tame Cat. So it looks like a pretty good route. So I'm going to name that Tame Cat 4x4 approach. Pink, we'll add it to my folder. We'll save it. And there you go. So now I'm getting all of this information. And then I was also interested in maybe coming down here and doing a hike on the Turtle Rock Loop. So I'll probably add a POI down here near this parking area. It's pretty good. All right. So I'll come in here. I'll search for hiking icon. There you go. So, I'm definitely putting this trip together, coming up with some options, hopefully helping me remember this in the months ahead, and I can share it with friends. One of the things you can do with friends too, if you want to add some notes to these, there's a notes field, so you could say a good 2 to 3 hour hike, right? And so you can start to collaborate in onX Offroad with other folks you might be traveling with. Now, there's also a few other map tools I don't use that much. There is a line tool where you can draw a line between 2 points. So it might be useful if you want to measure sort of the crow fly's distance between 2 points. You can also draw an area. So for some reason you wanted to say like, camp in this area, you could do that. Sort of define an area. And so I don't use those that often, but I did want to show them to you since we're trying to go through every feature. All right, now one of the most important features and the last big feature I'm going to show you here in web is offline maps. And so, things like routes and points of interest and stuff, as long as you've opened your mobile app or another device since doing this work here, that'll just automatically sync. But you have to intentionally download offline maps so that you have that map data when you're traveling, and you might not have cell coverage or you might not have a Starlink connection. And so it's pretty easy. You just go to offline maps, and then you go ahead and make one. Now I've already made one, so I'm going to delete this, and we can go ahead and make a new one together. So I'm going to get this box, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm just going to maybe zoom in one more. There you go. So that's pretty much surrounding all of Pole Mountain and the edges. And I like to have a little bit more data just in case you decide to explore a new area or something while you're in the area you're planning to go to. And I'll name this Pole Mountain Trip. And then I'm going to pick medium. So this is really the resolution of your satellite imagery. And so you're always going to get your vector topo, that first map we looked at, you're always going to get that information. This is really choosing the satellite. And so depending on your activity, if you're doing a really technical hike, maybe you want high resolution. In our case, we're just sort of off-roading, we're camping. It doesn't seem super high stakes. So I'm going to pick medium, and I'm going to hit save. And so basically what this is telling me, if I go back to offline maps, it'll show me that within this box, I have an offline map defined, and when we go to our mobile apps, I'll actually show you how you can download it on your phone or your tablet or whatever, because you're not taking your web browser with you, and this is not going to be offline, so you need to download it on your device. And then a few other quick things before we head over to my phone, and I'll show you what it looks like on my iPhone. You can come over here to Elite Pro Deals, and there's all sorts of deals with different companies. Like I use Battleborn batteries and Factor 55 recovery equipment. So you can click into these and see some deals you get if you're an Elite member in onX Offroad. And then also your stats. So this is a demo account, so I don't have too many stats, but my real account looks pretty good. And this will show you, how often you got out there, where you went, just to give you a sense of what you did, if that's motivating to you. And then lastly, if you ever need some help, you can always come down here to your My Account and Settings, and then Settings, And then if you click on FAQs, you'll get taken out to all the help documentation and how to get support and stuff like that. So this can be another great resource if you really want to dig into the details of how certain things work. All right, so this is the onX Offroad app on my iPhone. And as you can see, it's pretty nice that we already have all of the things we did in web. We have our routes, we have our points of interest. We can tap on them, get all the information, share, change them, all the things that we could do on web. And so things are a little bit, laid out in a slightly different way, but very familiar, right? We have our base maps here if we wanted to switch to satellite, right? We could go into 3D if we want it, and then we could pinch and zoom to go into the map. And then, we can use 2 fingers here to sort of tilt, and then we can use a couple fingers here, 2 fingers to rotate. So if you want to see the back of Turtle Rocks and really zoom in there. And I love this, don't you? Look how cool this is. Like this 3D just gives me such a sense of what it might be like there. And so it's one of my favorite features. All right, so we'll go back to 2D, go back to topo. All right, so those are some of the basic map controls. Now if your base maps are here, your activities here, so if you need to filter trail types or turn map layers on or off. And then the weather's up here, search is up here. There's a little hamburger menu here if you need to log out of your account or get to the elite deals or things like that. So very similar to web. You can go to My Content and see your folders. There's that Pole Mountain trip. And then some of the tools are down here. So if you wanted to add a waypoint or make a route, you could do it from here. And so pretty familiar. I'm not going to go back over those. I do want to show you some things that are a little bit different. So in addition to pinching and zooming on the map, something else you can do, because sometimes, your phone's mounted in a car, right? Or it might even be sideways. So landscape works really well too, which is cool. So you can use landscape. But let's say this is mounted in your car and you only have one hand free. So you can just sort of take one finger and double tap and you'll just zoom in, right? And then if you want to zoom out, you can use 2 fingers and tap once. So nice one-handed operation. Another thing you can do, like let's say, you wanted to maybe take a picnic over here by this pond, you turned on satellite, you said, I don't know if it'll be there, but hey, we'll add it. If you take one finger and you long press, right, we might say, hey, we're going to have a picnic here, right? And you might write picnic and pick an icon and save it and add it to the folder for the trip so that our friends have access to it. Right, and so it's really easy to add that point of interest with that one finger held down. And then, if you don't want to do it, you can also just dismiss it and get rid of it. Now, I want to show you a couple things that are mobile specific here and are really important. One is offline maps. So if we come in here and we zoom out, you actually see this red box and it's telling us we have an offline map defined, but we haven't downloaded it, right? Which is like big problem, right? Because we might not have data and we probably aren't going to be able to download huge maps, right? And so I do this before I leave on a trip or I get out the Starlink. And so if you see this box, I just do this before I leave. You come in here, you hit download, take a couple seconds on my home Wi-Fi connection. It's about 100 megs. And I get a green box. So I have confidence that that map is downloaded. And then, if I don't have data in the field, I can come in here and I'll still have the satellite imagery. I'll still have the topo imagery. And then things like the points of interest and the routes and the areas, those should all be there as long as you've opened your device at some point when you had data and it was able to sync from what you did in your web browser. Another feature that's available, and it's a bit newer, it's pretty cool, is navigation. So let's say we were going to do our Turtle Rock hike, and that's the first place we were going to go to on our trip. We could come in here and select navigate. Now, you might use Apple Maps or Google Maps, but they're not always that great once you leave the pavement and you're off-road. And so you can select onX navigation, and you're going to get a route that includes the pavement, the highways, the state roads, and all the way into the off-road travel sections here, right? And so it's pretty cool that you can use one app and one map from door to hike, from door to camp, from door to trail. And it's just nice because I used to have to switch apps when I got to the trailhead, and it was a big pain in the butt. And this way I can just, I can stay in the one app. And then if I'm also driving along the way and I'm like, hey, what's the what's the weather like, I can turn on, the precipitation layer and have some weather data as I'm driving and stuff like that. So I just like it's all in one app, and that's one of the things that I really find about onX Off-Road. It's sort of just the right amount of stuff, right? Not too much, not too little. It's very focused on off-roading and overlanding, and lets me do some of those other activities like hiking and camping and stuff like that. So we're going to go check out CarPlay and see what this looks like out in the truck. But if you've been enjoying this, I encourage you to give it a try. There's a link below. Use that. You can start a trial. And if you wind up purchasing, you'll get a 20% discount and you'll help support this channel. So if you are going to check it out, I really appreciate you using that link. And that way onX will know that I've been telling people about their app and helping more folks to get out there and go on cool adventures. All right, so I'm out here in the truck and I wanted to show you what onX looks like on my truck's display using CarPlay. So I have my phone plugged in and you can see I have the onX app up here. And I just wanted to show you how you can see some of the guided trails and such. So if you're driving around, and you're still sort of exploring and you want to say like, ooh, what's over there? Should we check it out? You can still sort of get that, but I'm gonna zoom in on this Pole Mountain area. And if we were driving, we would actually see our location here on the screen. But you can see all the points of interest and the trails that we had identified before. We have our data synchronized, and if we were in satellite view, we would have that. And then if we were offline, we'd have that data as well, that we had saved before. So that's why it's important to download your offline maps, so this will just work before you're out there in the field. And then one other thing I wanted to show you is this button down here. So if you tap this, you're basically going to be able to mark your location or start tracking. And then if you hit your mark my location, you'll drop a waypoint. So I often use this if I see a cool potential dispersed campsite or hike or just something I want to look up on the map later when I'm not driving. You can also use this to start tracking if you want to record your track and have it for later if you want to backtrack and say, hey, how did we get here? Or if you want to share that with someone who maybe wants to go on a similar trip as you. And you also don't have to use Go and Track from CarPlay. You can tap it here in the lower right corner of the app, and you'll see you'll get this little overlay, record track, and then once you start, it'll give you your distance and your speed, and it'll record a route to your onX app that you can go back later. We've used it sometimes when we're 80 miles off the paved road, and there's just an obstacle like a big snowbank and we can't get around it and we have to try and find a way back out. Sometimes if there's a lot of roads, it can be super helpful to know the way you drove in. It can also be super useful if you're sharing your previous travels with other adventurers who might, you're recommending a trail to try. And this is also what trail guides use to record where they are and then make sure that the route that is in onX is the correct route. So you might be wondering, what does onX cost and how do I get it? So I'm here on the pricing and options page of onX Off-Road. You can find it on the website. And there's really just a couple options. There's free, premium, and elite. Now, realistically, I think you have to have premium or elite for this to be useful. And I have elite because it has some of the extra features that I really want, including the partner discounts, the property and land ownership boundaries. And, I just want to support a cool company. I want onX to be around. They're aggregating data from hundreds of map sources across the federal government and state governments and local agencies. And I really appreciate that. I have hundreds of books and maps sitting around my house, and I probably, could use hundreds or thousands more to get anywhere close to the amount of information in onX. Plus, onX is updated. There's new features, there's more data, there's trail status, right? It's always evolving. And so it's just an easy tool for me to get out there and have adventures. And so it is well worth it. If you look at the different pricing, Elite is just under $100 a year and Premium is just under $35 a year. So either of these options can, I think really help get you out there for at least one more adventure. And I think, these prices are going to easily pay for themselves versus what you're saving going to hotels or paying to go to fancy resorts and facilities. So if you're not sure, sign up for a trial. But in any case, there's a link below and you can click that to get started. It helps me support the channel. It lets onX know that you're finding this content helpful. And it also will get you a 20% discount should you decide to upgrade to Premium or Elite. All right, I hope that was helpful. That was almost 100 different features that we just went over. Now, if you want to jump back to any of them, if you look in the description below, there's links to each section so you can jump back to offline maps or creating a route or using the satellite imagery. So you can always come back to this video as a reference. And if you have a friend that uses onX, please feel free to share it with them as well. Now, onX is always changing and evolving, so I'm sure there'll be great new features this year, and I hope to share some of those with you, and I'll let you know when they come out and how I'm using them. And as I mentioned before, I'm also going to do a series not only about the features of onX, but how I use onX and other tools to go from picking an area to explore, to identifying options for cool routes and awesome dispersed camping, what I do to get ready in the days before I leave, how I actually navigate and manage things out there on the trail, and what I do when I come home to organize all that information. So if you're more interested in that process and planning side of things, please hit that subscribe button and you'll get notified about those new videos. And if you found this helpful, please hit that like button so folks like you can find helpful content like this. Again, if you haven't already done it, click the link below to sign up for onX and give it a try for yourself. It helps support this channel, and it'll also get you a 20% discount if you decide to upgrade to Elite or Premium. I'm Adam from Bantha Overland. I hope you found something in here that was helpful and helps you get out there around the campfire for an extra night this year, and I hope to see you out there on the trail.